So welcome. Oh, there we go. So welcome everybody. This is the virtual nonprofit workshop series. The series is offered in partnership between the Hartford Public Library and the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. My name is Gina Federico, and I'm the Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations at the Hartford Public Library. And representing the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving today, we have Tracy and Lucas. And I'd love to hand it over to Lucas to give a quick introduction to the Foundation's nonprofit support program. Lucas?
Thank you so much, Gina. It's nice to see everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Lucas Codognola, and I'm a Senior Community Impact Officer here at the Foundation, and I'm part of the Nonprofit Support Program. So if you haven't heard of us, NSP for short, we are the capacity building arm of the Foundation. And so we work with nonprofits of all different sizes and stages of development to support their capacity building needs, organizational strengthening, support. And we are really grateful for this partnership that we have with the Hartford Library, where we have a series of workshops, really that's contextual and that is sort of geared towards organizations that are growing and building themselves with some of these tools related to nonprofit management. And before I throw it back to Gina, I also want to acknowledge that we understand that there's a lot going on in the world around us, a lot of uncertainties for nonprofits with the new sort of social political climate that we're in. And so we really hope that you take advantage of these series. We are being very intentional in the types of workshops that we provide for you all so that you all can focus on your missions and your visions and the work that you get to do in the community while safeguarding your organization and growing your infrastructure. So we're really glad that you're here. You will be getting a recording and all of the materials and resources from the presentation. And we encourage you to share the recording and the materials with your boards as well as with your teams. So I'll throw it back to you, Gina, to introduce our speaker today. Thank you, team.
Great. Thanks, Lucas. So today's session, which is called Tech Tools and Techniques to Boost Efficiency, will be presented by Karen Graham, President and CEO of Karen Graham Consulting. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Karen in a minute, but just wanted to say first, before we start, if folks wanted to enter their name and organization in the chat, feel free to do that. Also, if you'd like to post questions, you will be monitoring, Tracy and team will be monitoring the chat. So feel free to post questions and we can address them throughout the session. And then as Lucas mentioned, the follow-up email will include a copy of the slides and a link to the recording, which is the landing page of the nonprofit support program, which has all the recordings. And at the end of the session today, we will have an evaluation. So we'd really appreciate you filling that out before you leave. But on to Karen. So Karen is a nonprofit technology strategist who loves helping people solve problems, from making their work easier, more enjoyable, to enabling their organization to achieve its mission more effectively. With 20 plus years of experience in nonprofit leadership, consulting, and capacity building, Karen has deep expertise in aligning people, processes, and technology to drive impact. She writes, speaks, and advises on technology, leadership, software selection, user adoption, innovation, and strategic IT alignment. Karen serves on the grant review board of the Schlavic Family Foundation and the board of directors of the Minneapolis Southwest High School Performing Arts Committee. She earned her MBA in nonprofit management from the University of St. Thomas. Please, everybody, welcome Karen. Karen, take it away.
Hey, thanks for that introduction. And I'm so glad to see so many people who are taking time out of busy days to learn a little bit about maybe how to make the day feel a little bit less busy or at least less hectic. Squeeze a few more minutes out of your day and make yourselves more productive and your organization more productive as well. So so thanks so much for having me as your guest. I'm going to actually start us out with a question. And so we'll be doing some stuff in the chat. I have a few polls for you. And so, don't let your attention wander too much away from the webinar. I know you're probably trying to eat lunch and stuff like that at the same time too, but let me ask you, if you had an extra 10 minutes a day, what could you do with that time? Just like dream a little bit, and no answer is too silly or too serious. What would you do with an extra 10 minutes? You could put that in the chat. Seeing some responses come in. Somebody said eat my lunch, that's awesome, Darlene. I hope you do find some time to get some good nourishment. There's a couple of people that said read. I'm a reader. I think I read about, I think it was like 45 books last year. I'm a pretty voracious reader of all different genres, and I'd love to talk about books. So see me offline for that. And some exercise, stretching, sleep, things like that. It's funny that that nobody said like meet with donors, or I mean, Gina said get ready for upcoming meetings and appointments. So that's great. But it's funny that our minds first go to how to take care of ourselves before they go to, kind of how to advance the goals of our organizations. And there's a good reason for that. When you are feeling like you have a good work-life balance, you're feeling calm, and that you have sufficient time to get the important things done, then that actually makes you do better quality work, and it's going to make you a better employee, as well as just a person who's feeling kind of more on top of things, and things will feel less hectic to you. So that's some of our goals today. I would like to give you all an extra 10 minutes tomorrow using some of these tips to be able to sleep and read and exercise and organize and all those things. And here's how we're going to do it. The agenda for the next 90 minutes, or 80, I guess we've got left, is to start with managing your inbox. And then we'll look at some other ways to speed up your work through automation and artificial intelligence, process improvement. I have a bunch of other techniques and tips that are sort of in the second half of this. And I have a wrap-up activity, which we may be able to kind of do some of that together. Otherwise, it'll be a homework assignment for you. So let's dive right into managing your inbox. And I want to ask you a question in the chat. We'll see if somebody wants to try to respond to this. Why do you think I started with this particular thing in a webinar that's about increasing your efficiency and productivity through tech tools? Why did I start with managing your inbox? And I'll invite any of our co-hosts to unmute and offer your opinions as well. But I am seeing, Julie, I like your response. Biggest time suck of the day. Darlene also used the word time, or the phrase time suck in their response. So yeah, that is exactly why I started with your inbox. That when I talk to people about like, where do you feel like you're not being productive, that's often the first thing they mention. So I have some tips for that. And I'm going to stay on this screen for a minute to go through getting things done, which is a kind of a framework or approach that I have used, and maybe you've heard about this before. It is actually an official productivity method that was popularized by a book by David Allen. And the core principles are that you're minimizing how many times you touch each item, whether it's like a virtual item or digital item, like an email message, or a physical item, like a piece of mail. So minimizing how many times you touch things is one principle. And the other one is avoiding what David Allen calls open loops, which are things that like your brain keeps having to kind of come back to something again and doesn't get to resolution. And so some of the ways you do that are batching work. And you can batch work by the mode of work. So for example, like phone calls, errands, writing, things like those might be different batches of work that you do. You could also batch things by project, which is more what I do, or by things that are urgent versus not urgent. And that kind of determines how you organize your day and how you organize your work. There is also this 5-step process that that David Allen suggests, and I'll walk you through this, and then I'm going to give you an example of it from my own work. So the first thing is capturing what has your attention, kind of collecting everything. And then the next step is processing it or clarifying it. And that really means like processing. What do I have to do with this? Does it require action? Do I just need to file this away? Is it important or not? Then the third step is organizing. So that's putting it somewhere. In terms of email, that means not your inbox. Or in terms of like the bills and advertisements and so forth that I get in the mail, that means like not on the kitchen table, right? I'm deciding what to do with something, and then I'm putting it in the right place, so that I can either take further action or just file it away. The fourth step is reflecting, and that's about doing a review. I usually do, and David Allen recommends this, I usually do a daily and weekly review. So at the end of the day, I'm just kind of sorting through everything, kind of seeing like, what did I accomplish? What do I need to move to tomorrow, and so forth. And then I also do one on a weekly basis where I'm looking like a little bit broader picture. And then finally, the last step is engage, which means like actually doing the work or like addressing the things that you have captured. So I know in the abstract that maybe doesn't mean a lot. So I want to show you how I do this with my email. So I start with the capture step, and I try, I'm not perfect at this, but I try to only go through my inbox twice a day. And so usually it's first thing in the morning and then after my lunch break, and I'm processing everything. And at that point, twice a day, my inbox is empty. There's nothing left in it by the time I'm done with this. Then I'll look at each message that's come in, and that's my clarify step. And I decide, is this something that I can respond to in less than 3 minutes? Then I'll just do it right now and just get it done. If it's something that takes longer, then I'll usually make it into a task and then archive it. I'll show you that. So then if it is a task, I'll set it up in Todoist, which is a task management tool that I use. There's lots of different ones, but I'll show you this one. Like I said, I do an end of day or weekly review. And then when I actually sit down to do my tasks, I usually batch them by project, and then I start with the thing that's the most urgent. So I'm going to actually exit. Oops, if I can figure out how to do this, I'm going to exit out of my presentation here and show you my email. So this is my inbox. I'll make it a little bigger too. I'll zoom in so you can see. And so you can see here, Lucas has sent me a message. I usually go through them from top to bottom, but in this case, I'm just going to show you one message. So this is my capture step. And this is just like a demonstration email that Lucas kindly sent me before this. So see this email, and then I'm thinking like, okay, can I respond to this right away? Then I'll just do it. I'm gonna say this will take me a little bit more thought to give him a good response. And so I'm gonna click this little add to Todoist button, which I have installed as a Gmail add-in. And then it brings up my task list. And I'm going to change it defaults to the title of the email, but I'm going to change the task to say, respond to Lucas, oops, and spell his name correctly. And that's going to be due today. I'm going to give it a priority 2. I'm going to give this, I don't know, just like a tag. You can tag with all different topics and categories and stuff like that. And then I'm also going to put this in my consulting category of work. So those are my bigger buckets of work. And there's other stuff you can do with this too, but for now, I'll just leave it at that. I add that, and then I'll be able to see that in my to-do list here, or actually I don't even have Todoist open, but this is my my Todoist application that shows everything kind of sorted by tag. And I can see things that are upcoming on different dates. I can look at them all by project and so forth. So just to go back to, and I'm going to go back to our full screen here. To go back to this, now you can see where, sorry, I'm losing my my notes. You can see kind of how all of those things fit in, right? So I would love to get your comments and questions about this if you want. And I'm gonna go on while you're thinking about this to the next slide, but first I think I need to, I'm gonna change my view of this so that I can see notes in case there's anything really special I want to make sure we get to. Okay, so folders. You might have noticed, or maybe not, if you weren't really snooping that closely in my email when I shared my inbox, but you might have noticed that I don't have any folders in there other than the default ones that you can't really get rid of. So in my inbox, if I'm finished with an email message, if I'm finished working with it, I just archive it. I've learned over time that folders are just like a waste of energy, and that the search in both Google and Outlook, probably in other email applications you might use if you have something else, the search is so good at this point that it's much faster to just search for something by keyword or by the sender or whatever than to look around in a folder and search through folder contents to find it. So that's a little hack that I was actually dared maybe 12 years ago by somebody I was meeting with. She said, I dare you to like stop using folders for a week and see what happened. And I was like, I can't let go of my folders. I love my folders. I had, 25 folders that were organizing everything, and I did it. And I realized how brilliant it actually was. So there are advanced search features in Gmail and Outlook that you can use if you want to see exactly like, I want to see an email that has an attachment and it has the keyword healthcare and it came from Tracy, and I know it was sometime in 2024. And you can, narrow all those parameters so you can find the thing you're looking for more quickly. What I've found is I actually am usually able, just by keyword, to find the message I need almost instantly. So I will now pass that dare on to you to try a week without folders and see how it goes. You saw that I used Todoist, and that is one of the tools that I have here. Sorry, I'm not gonna screen share anymore. So I'm just gonna change this to full screen. A couple of other ones that you could think of about are Asana, OmniFocus, there's ClickUp, Trello, there's like all kinds of different things here. And if you're thinking about like what is going to work best for you, I would consider portability across devices, so that, like, for example, you can see the same list of tasks on your phone and your desktop computer or your laptop or whatever, that, it's not just like sitting in one place. I would also prioritize something that integrates with your email system. So if you're using Gmail, Todoist is a great choice. If you're using Outlook, especially Outlook Desktop, Todoist doesn't actually have the greatest integration with that. And so in that case, you might actually think about using Microsoft To Do, because that's part of the Microsoft suite of tools. It's fully integrated with the rest of their stuff for the most part. And so that might be a great solution. And I think that Microsoft's To Do, as well as their more advanced project and planner tools, have come a long way in the last few years, and they're still putting a lot of effort into developing those. Whatever you use for task management, I would suggest trying some of the more advanced features like reminders, recurring tasks, assigning tasks to other people if you have an enterprise shared account, and also attaching or linking documents, emails, websites to the task. All of those things are like sort of more intermediate level features, I guess, that tend to help you be more productive and get more out of the tool. And I see in the chat somebody's saying she's using Microsoft To Do, and that when I did use Outlook when I was an employee of an organization that used Microsoft, then I 100% use Microsoft To Do. So, but I mean, you want to find the thing that fits you too. I know a few people who are huge fans of Remember the Milk, which is a funny name for a task app that is kind of all purpose. It's not just for business, somewhat obviously. Here's another thing that can help with making email more efficient, or with helping you not forget things. And so I'm just going to quickly play this little video about the Boomerang Gmail extension.
To stay in touch, we send a lot of emails back and forth. So I started using Boomerang. With Boomerang, I can write an email now and schedule it to be sent at the perfect time. My email lands right in their inbox and they're likely to see it. Sometimes clients still don't respond, and I don't know why. But that's all good, because with Boomerang, I can set a notification in case I don't get a response, which reminds me to follow up. Better communication for better results, no matter what you do. That's Boomerang. Try it out today.
All right, so there's a little extension that before Gmail offered the ability to schedule messages, that part was really helpful. Now they actually have that just built into the application. So does Outlook. You can schedule a message to be sent later. And but what's nice about Boomerang still is that it can send you a reminder later and say like and you can set the time that you want to receive that. So like you emailed this person 6 days ago, they haven't responded yet. Do you want to do something about that? Or it can just like remind you to follow up on something. So that's kind of a fun one. They also have some meeting scheduling tools in Boomerang that are kind of cool. So for what it's worth, there's a tool that not everybody always knows.
To stay
about.
in touch.
Oh, I did not mean to play this again. Here we go. The tools like Slack and Teams and Discord also are helpful alternatives to email. It can keep your inbox from getting incredibly large and full. And so if you can get your team to use one of these tools for threaded conversations and less reply all nightmares, I would suggest maybe trying some of this. Each of these, Slack, Teams, and Discord, have similar feature sets. Their integration with other tools you might be using is going to vary. So obviously, well, maybe not obviously to you, obviously to me, because I am in this world so much, Teams is a Microsoft tool. And so Teams and Outlook and SharePoint and other Microsoft tools work really well together. And so if you're on the Microsoft platform, then Teams would be an obvious choice. If you're not on Microsoft, then maybe using something like Slack or Discord could be better. The downside of tools like this is it does give you a second place to check. So if you're used to just relying on email for everything, now you've got another place to log in and monitor communication. However, to ease that transition, they do have the ability, each of these tools, to notify you by email if there's new activity. And some of them have some integration with task applications, some of them don't. Some of them save only a limited amount of history, like 3 months to a year of history, depending on what license you have. And so that's something to think about too, in terms of like knowledge management, document retention, things like that. Do you need to pay for a license that has a longer retention period on that stuff? Or do you need to figure out some way to be able to maybe download histories and save them elsewhere? Especially if you're using personal accounts on this, it's always better in tools like this to have an organization account that you use to log into it. But I know that's really not a reality for some very small organizations and those that are just starting out. Darlene, I'm glad you love Teams. I have become a big fan of that over the last year or so too, as I've been working with a client of mine who's using Teams heavily. Wondering if anybody else is using these tools and how they're working for you. It's great to have that commentary in the chat so you can hear from each other. So I've got an activity for you at this point, and I would like you to, I mean, not literally write down time-wasting activities, but maybe type them into the chat, and see if you can come up with at least one that you can put in there, and like one that feels kind of juicy to you. And I want to talk about those a little bit and see if there's anything in there that we can use to like as examples for the rest of the webinar, or we can kind of troubleshoot right now and see if we can do a little problem solving together with some of the things that you feel like are wasting your time. Then after this, we'll move on to our next session or section. Not seeing anything yet. Okay, here we go. So, okay, so there was one about scrolling through promotions inbox. It is nice that they're separated out, right? So if your email has the capability of automatically flagging things that might be promotions or social activity or things like that, and kind of separating them into a different tab or a different folder, I would suggest doing that because it helps you batch that stuff. When you're looking through the promotions, you can do them all at once, and maybe just based on the subject line, you could decide whether you actually want to read those or just like go through very quickly and delete them. There's also a tool, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's like Unroll Me or something like that, where it will look at your email address and all the different subscriptions that you have to e-newsletters and that sort of thing, and it'll let you see them all in one list and decide which ones you want to stay on and which ones you maybe want to get off of. So that's kind of a nice thing to do in batches too. And I'm seeing, okay, oh, Lucas, using email to schedule meetings. That is such a pain. And I have a follow-up resource on that. That's not actually officially in the presentation right now, but have a follow-up resource about scheduling tools. And as long as you brought that up, I'll just kind of preview it. There are a number of scheduling tools that will pull people for meeting availability when you're trying to schedule a group. But there's also a cool thing that I just tried out in Gmail the other day where you can insert meeting suggested times like right into your email message. And then when somebody clicks on that, it schedules. So that's kind of an awesome thing too. I'll share some info on that in the follow-up. There's another one here about multitasking, and I don't know if there's really a tool to keep you from that, but I do have something I'll share later that is about time blocking, and I find that's a good way to kind of help with the challenges of multitasking. Turning off notifications on things has been really helpful for me personally as well. I don't know if people have other tips for that, but I have found that when I have those little things popping up on my screen, like you have a new message, you have whatever, that is such a distraction and it doesn't really help me at all. So I just turn off every notification of everything. Moving spam to a spam folder. That's an interesting one because I found that I very rarely get spam messages. My filter is good enough that it catches almost every single one. I think this week maybe I've had one so far that was that snuck through my filter. And let me just see if there's, oh, interesting. Vanessa shares inquiries that are like not relevant, and yeah, I don't know if you can prevent those coming, but giving yourself an easy way to process those requests quickly, using some of the email techniques that I shared, for example, I hope that helps a little. So I think I got through a lot of those comments. I appreciate that. Yeah, William, checking your email every time you get that notification is it's like a siren call, and it's gonna smash you up against the rocks. So let's go to automation and artificial intelligence. And if anybody wants to attempt to define these things, like what is automation, what is artificial intelligence, I'd be interested in how you're thinking about those terms. When I think about automation, I think of it as actually kind of a subset of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence being like basically computers just doing things for us. And that might mean compiling information, it might mean synthesizing things or summarizing, it might mean making small decisions on our behalf that we have provided instructions for, all sorts of things like that. And I'm using a lot of automation and artificial intelligence tools in my work every day. I would say probably not an hour goes by when I don't take advantage of something like that. But it's not like robots are doing my job for me. It's just little things like this. So here's an example of a tool called Zapier. Some people say Zapier. I have discovered the people who work there say Zapier. And this is a tool that can integrate other things through sort of recipes. So an example of one that I actually used in some of my past work was we had a learning management system for like e-learning. When a new learner registered there, we wanted them also to get added to our database, to our CRM. And so we set up a Zap using Zapier so that they would automatically get added to the database, and they would get an email welcoming them that was sent not through the learning management system, but it was sent through this other system. And then it would also send a Slack notification to the person running the program. A new person has registered. And all those things happened without any human intervention once it was set up. There's another tool that works similarly to this that is called If This Then That, IFTTT. And it does kind of the same sort of thing where like you set up a triggering action and then other things that will happen as a result of that. And that can just streamline a lot of like systems talking to each other. And a lot of these tools have a free level. And then if you want to do maybe more than 10 automations, or if you want to have enterprise access, whatever, like team access, then they might charge you. So that's kind of a fun one. And here's one more example of a Zapier one, which is a volunteer fills out an interest form on your organization's website. Then the automation automatically sends a booking invitation via Calendly, which is one of the scheduling tools that I highlighted in that extra resource. Then it creates a Google Doc that is based on an intake template that you have. And it also creates a task for you, maybe in To-Do or To-Do List or whatever you're using to prepare for the meeting. So all of those things would be normally, taking 5 to 10 minutes each. And this is automating all of that, so you don't have to think about it. Now, the risk with these things is that it automates things that like you might forget about. And or if some process changes, then you have to kind of go back and adjust this stuff. So just good to kind of check on all of your recipes from time to time and all your automations and make sure that they're still working the way you need them to. And they're not doing things they're not supposed to. There are some more advanced marketing automation tools like HubSpot and Marketo that will automate things based on a person's behavior. Depending on like what they do on your website or what email messages they open or reply to, links they click, things like that. And what it can do is reveal the most engaged prospects for donors, for people that would like to participate in your program, volunteer, be advocates on behalf of your cause, whatever sort of constituent that you are trying to engage. And so I'm going to play this little video too. This is just a minute or two. By the way, this guy's enthusiasm is through the roof. I wish I had this much energy.
So chances are you've heard about HubSpot. You might even have downloaded a resource from their website, but you're not exactly sure what HubSpot actually is. And it's a common confusion point, not only because HubSpot is such a powerful suite of a number of different tools, but also there's a lot of fluff and I guess hype online about what it actually does. The best way to look at HubSpot is that it does 3 key things really, really well. Firstly, it automates marketing activity based on user-triggered behavior. Now, by that I mean, when I say marketing activity, it could be an automated email, it could be an automated SMS, it could be the creation of a task that is sent to your internal team or sales team for them to action. So as an example, say you have a prospect who's gone cold, who's been missing for 3 months, and all of a sudden they come back to your website. You could send an automated email that is sent on behalf of the sales rep, sending them a well-timed offer, and perhaps the opportunity to book a meeting, all automatically, even if that sales rep is off sick. Or, for example, say you're in college and you've got closing dates for a number of different courses. You could send an automated SMS to these prospects, advising them that positions are closing and spots remain, for example. The second thing HubSpot does really, really well is that it bubbles your warmest leads to the top. So, say I visit your website and I fill out a contact form, and that's all I do. The prospect B does the exact same thing. They fill out a form, but they also open up your autoresponder email 3 times. They visit your pricing page 4 or 5 times. They check out who you are, your address. Now, arguably, that person is a lot warmer and closer to making a decision than I would be. Your sales reps should be advised of that. This should actually help them focus on the most warmest leads first. Thirdly, HubSpot combines a lot of different sales and marketing tools all in one place. A lot of these you'll be familiar with, but the beauty is you have a single customer view, a single database where all of these tools can, I guess, leverage off and take advantage of. So, for example, HubSpot has an email platform in it. Think of MailChimp on steroids. HubSpot has a landing page and form builder in it. HubSpot has a blogging platform inside of it. You can also manage all of your social media from it. And from one place, post your content from your blog to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So, like anything, HubSpot is the machine, right? HubSpot is the Ferrari. Your content and inbound marketing efforts are going to be your fuel. Those two things have to work together. So hopefully this video helped, and now you know it.
Right. I'm going to cut him off a little bit early. That he actually wasn't quite the hype machine in this video that he was in one of the other ones I watched, but this guy loves HubSpot so much, and he doesn't work for them. He works for like another company that uses HubSpot. So HubSpot and Marketo and some of these kind of tools do tend to be a lot more expensive than some of the other ones that I've shared. And so that's something to keep in mind, but they do have some pretty incredible capabilities for automation. And
The chances are
oh, sorry, I'm trying to get ahead to this other slide. There are also automation tools that are probably built into some of the things that you use already. And so maybe just think about some of the applications for this. See if you're using a database, a CRM tool, or a financial management system, maybe see if they have some of these capabilities. And so a few examples are in a case management system that you're using to track clients or participants, service recipients, whatever you may call them in your organization. There might be sort of wizards or automated tools that guide people through the intake process. And they might even be able to, through AI, suggest enrollments or referrals that would be helpful to that person based on their profile, based on their interests and needs and that sort of thing. And notify staff of changes that are happening. For donor management, a couple of examples are being able to assign a donor to somebody's portfolio, assign them to a solicitor, and then also assign them for particular kind of follow-up based on, did they get, like, if they gave a $250 or above gift, then they get a certain kind of follow-up. If they gave a gift that's lower than that, then they get a different kind of follow-up, stuff like that. For finance, just routing reports for viewing and approval is something that automation can do very well. I've also seen accounting tools that can capture invoice data via OCR, which is optical character recognition. So they can just like scan a document that you received from someone and capture all the important information to create that invoice in your accounting system, so you don't have to type it in. So all kinds of possibilities there. And maybe you can think of some more examples that you've seen or used too. And I invite you to share those if you did. And now we've got a short detour. This is kind of about AI. I'm curious to know how AI considerations, including automation, are likely to affect your next software decision. So if you're thinking about purchasing any new software in the coming year, will AI be a big consideration for you or not? if you dug into my profile at all, you may know that one of the things that I do is some research on the donor management software market. And I've published a report on that research in the last 6 months or so. And so I'll share some results of that in a minute. Are we ready to close the poll? I don't know if we can see the results, but I will show you the results from the donor management use and satisfaction survey, which I conducted. And this was these were responses from about a year ago. And so a lot of people said that they couldn't say yet. And now you're like, don't know, not sure. There were only 15% of you who said that. So I'm thinking that this is probably going to become a little bit more common. Other than that, you know, it looks like a lot of people are pretty well aligned with what was found in that research. So I'll close this out. What I'm seeing just anecdotally in my consulting work too is that some people have this attitude like, oh, I'm too busy to think about AI. I'm just trying to get my work done. You know, I'm just going to shove that to the side and deal with it later. But there are a lot of organizations that are really starting to see the potential for making their work more streamlined, but also to open up possibilities they never had before for data analysis and summing and things like that. So generative AI is often kind of the gateway for people to using other kinds of AI. And I'm not sure if you've all experimented with ChatGPT or other tools like that. I know some of the folks at the library and the foundation have done so, and I do too. So there's an example here. I actually put in the prompt that I used, which was design a 10-minute learning activity for adults who have been presented with tips on managing their inbox. And then it gave me back this like all the steps of the activity and what materials would be needed for if this is for an in-person workshop. And I thought it was actually pretty good quality stuff. So I often use this when I'm designing courses or webinars to give me extra ideas. And especially for things like learning activities or additional resources, people who are experts on a topic, things like that. I'll use ChatGPT for that. However, it is not fully reliable. Sometimes it's like your drunk uncle who, like, you know, sometimes says stuff that is correct and then sometimes just makes stuff up, or you kind of have to fact check it. And there also is known bias in AI tools because they're trained on things that humans have produced, and humans have biases, and so the tools are only as good as the material that they learn from. And there are some privacy considerations to think about as well. So unless you're using a completely private AI that is kind of like self-contained within your organization, you may want to be cautious about what kind of information you give it when you're feeding it a prompt. So I'll give you an example of that. I did some interviews that were of a sort of sensitive nature to understand what was going on in an organization. And I would have saved a lot of time had I pasted the interview transcripts into an AI tool and asked for summaries and themes. But, and I have done that with some of my other work. But in this case, it just was sensitive enough that I didn't want to put that into ChatGPT because I'm not 100% sure what they will do with that information and where it might end up. Another example of AI tools that are becoming very common are meeting assistants. In fact, I was working with a global organization that had a lot of people for whom English was not their first language. And they found it really helpful to have Otter AI transcribe the meetings and summarize meetings for them. But what we found is we'd have a meeting with 15 people, we'd have 15 otters in it. And they were all sending notifications and sending emails to everybody in the meeting. And so we had to establish some guidelines around use of those tools and say like, only the meeting host is going to have the meeting assistant, and they will share the transcript with everybody else afterward, and so forth. So we had to kind of figure out the etiquette around that. And there's an example of a message that we sent out about that on the screen. I do have, and you'll get a copy of these slides. So you'll be able to click that link to the reviews. I linked a review site here that covers a number of different tools, and like choosing a tool probably is less important though than figuring out the protocols. So you will need to think about, like in what circumstances are you required to ask permission before recording a meeting or transcribing it? How many AIs can attend? And this was another thing that came up in this organization. Can someone send their AI assistant in lieu of attending the meeting themselves? Is that like, maybe sometimes that's okay, but in other cases, probably not. Here is what is more exciting to me about where AI is going. This is an example of a chart that was created by AI by just like speaking or typing a prompt into a CRM, into a database. That said, I want to see like a chart that shows whatever, and you just describe it, and then it would show that to you. So using natural language interactions with software is something I think we're going to see more and more of in the future. And I'm excited about this because it is a lot easier for non-technical people to be able to say, like, I want to see a report that shows all of the people who made more than one donation in 2024 and live in New Hampshire, whatever, then to try to figure out the query that will get you to that. So that's a pretty cool thing that that I think is going to happen a lot in the future. All right, I'm just kind of doing a time check. I think we're doing good on time here.
There was a quick question on the chat
Yeah.
around the meeting assistant. Is it just a transcription service or is it something more?
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I'm sorry I skipped over that. I should have explained more about what they are. Thanks for asking, Erica. So these meeting assistants that I had listed on this page were most of them will record your meeting, transcribe it, and summarize it. And increasingly, they are getting good enough at the summary that they'll say, like, here's your task list, or, here are the follow-up tasks from this meeting and who is assigned to do those things. And so that's kind of the gist of it. There are also translation tools and things like that are built into some meeting tools now too. And okay, Leslie's asking, is Otter AI better than AI Companion on Zoom? I think it's worth testing and seeing what you like better, because better can be a bit subjective. I have found that the Zoom summaries have gotten more accurate in my opinion, like over the last year compared to when they first kind of started offering that. And I've tested Otter, Fireflies. I liked Fireflies quite a lot. I've been on meetings that had Fathom as the assistant, and that seemed to be pretty good quality too. So, but they're all evolving and changing so rapidly that it's kind of hard to say like that one is the best right now, because that might be totally different a month from now. But yeah, you're right. Zoom has an AI companion. Teams has as well. I think that Google Meet has something like that, but it's not available unless you have a certain level of account, which I do not personally have, and so I haven't had a chance to test that. All right. So let's talk about process improvement just briefly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I think when you're talking about tools and techniques to boost productivity, process improvement is something that just kind of has to be included in there. So, let's say like you're a nonprofit that enlists volunteers to do yard work for seniors. Like that's one of your programs. So you're having people do like raking and stuff like that. And so the process we're going to think about here is how the chores get requested and scheduled and completed. And so here's one like framework for that. It's Plan, Do, Check, Act, which was developed by William Edwards Deming. And it's oh, actually, I'm sorry. I also talked about this to a group from Minnesota just recently, and so I left a note in there about it being used in the Central Minnesota Continuous Improvement Cohort. That doesn't matter to you, but the point is, it's a very well-known kind of system in business, and so if your issue with this organization that's arranging chores is that volunteers are not showing up, then you can kind of think through like, okay, so the planning step is to identify that's our issue. Do might be to test potential solutions. So maybe we try out reminders. Maybe we try, I don't know, like we think of a few different approaches that we want to test. And so that's the do step. Check is when you look at the results and compare like which one did better. And then act would be implementing the best solution. Pretty simple, just kind of like learning through experimentation what works and what doesn't. But sometimes it's helpful to just have a framework like this to think through your steps. Another element of process improvement might be to understand the process, and so immersion is like putting yourself into the actual process, and simulation is making a model of the process. I don't know if anybody saw that there was a movie about McDonald's, like the McDonald's restaurants and kind of their origin story. And there's a scene in that movie that I loved where they're in a parking lot and they draw out kind of like the kitchen, I think in chalk on the parking lot. And then everybody kind of simulates what it's going to be like in the kitchen to be making hamburgers and French fries. And they figure out how to organize the kitchen so that they're not bumping into each other. So it's like the most efficient layout and like steps of the process that could be possible. And so maybe think about like, how could we use immersion or simulation to understand this sample process of volunteer yard work? Could we, actually like go do it, like sign up for yard work and do it? Or is there some way to do sort of a simulation of that process that would help us have insight into how to improve it? Documenting the process is another step here, I guess. And so I'll share just a couple different ways to do that with some links where you can find more information. So one is experience diagramming. This one, I actually have found that groups really like to do this. When I've done this with people in workshops, you just like get a big piece of paper and kind of do a timeline of like, what is the person you're trying to optimize the experience for? What is that person experiencing at different times and places? What elements of that are positive or negative? And it maybe helps you see ways that you can improve it, and also things that you don't want to mess with that are already good. Another way to document processes, which you might have seen, is called swim lanes, and usually the lanes correspond to different people or roles in the process. And then there's a kind of an established way of documenting this stuff, and I don't even know what the different shapes are for, because this is not like my deep area of expertise, but you can watch a YouTube video and learn how to do this. And so this is just kind of a way to document like what happens at different stages and who is involved. And then this one I actually really like too, which is a storyboard, kind of a more creative approach. And I know Canva has templates for storyboarding like this. You can also just make up your own with pencil and paper. And it's kind of a way of like drawing out a cartoon story of what is happening and being able to get at different perspectives. So you could draw the story from the perspective of the volunteer, from the perspective of the person who lives in the house where the leaves are being raked, from the perspective of the volunteer coordinator and so forth. And each time you tell the story from a different perspective, it kind of gives you a different insight into that. So I'm going to give you, since this isn't a major focus of this webinar, I'm going to give you a practice activity that you can kind of bring home with you or do on your own time. And you'll have these slides with you. Those will be available within the next few days at least. And I would suggest picking a process in your organization that seems like maybe it could become a little bit more efficient and trying one of these ways to understand the process and then diagram it and see if you can identify some places where you could apply things like automation or other kinds of tech tools that might make it more efficient. Or maybe it's not a technical solution at all. Maybe it has to do with moving responsibility from one person to another, something like that, or even eliminating a step. I'm just looking at the chat real quick. William, I like your synopsis of how the process examination boils down to ready, aim, fire instead of shoot first and ask questions later. Okay, so I'm going to round this out with a few more tips and techniques. And I mentioned earlier about time blocking when someone brought up the challenge of multitasking. And so this Pomodoro is a technique that it has something to do with making tomato sauce that I don't completely understand, but you can actually buy a tomato-shaped timer if you want to really time your blocks into certain segments. So that's kind of fun. But Pomodoro specifically uses 25-minute focus time blocks and then 5-minute breaks. And then you just repeat that and you can stack, maybe 3, 4, or 5 blocks on top of each other, depending how much energy you have before you need a longer break. And this, this is kind of based on some research about attention spans and productivity and stuff like that. And so that is an example of a time blocking strategy that works for many people, but maybe for you, 25 minutes isn't the right time. Maybe it needs to be like 45 minutes with a 15-minute break or something different. But one way or another, many people find that having a time block that's dedicated to a certain thing where you turn off all distractions, you dedicate your time to only working on one thing, it helps them get stuff done a lot faster and with better quality too. That's an important thing there. Like you're not just kind of speeding through the work and doing it sloppily, but you're actually giving your full attention to it and giving it the quality that it deserves. Some of the ways to use time blocks are to actually schedule time with yourself on your calendar and doing sometimes whole days that are dedicated to certain things. So for me, the first work day of every month is admin day. And that's when I do my expense reports and my billing and all the paperwork stuff that is part of my job. I'm a freelancer now, and so I'm not really having team meetings on that day, but when I used to work with a team, that was also the day when we required everybody to be in the office. Other days we were kind of, going wherever, but we didn't have any meetings other than our team meeting that day. And it was just a time when we knew that we would all be dedicated to those kinds of tasks. And people seem to really appreciate that and value that, since they did have a lot of administrative requirements, that we were able to carve out time for that. And they didn't have to just fit it in between all their other work. So I like this picture because this is for many years kind of how I was working. Like I had, especially during the COVID pandemic when kids were doing school from home, there was no such thing as eliminating distractions in my work. And what I could do though is minimize distractions. And I had to set some expectations with my family members for like, what does it mean when mom's door is closed? Is it okay to I shouldn't actually say this publicly, and this is being recorded and everything, but I'll just tell you, I have a father-in-law who likes to just stop by. And when I first started working from home, he thought it was totally okay to just like stop by at 11 o'clock in the morning and have a little cup of tea and chit chat and whatever, and kind of interrupt my work day in that way. And so I had to kind of have some conversations with him about like, no, even though I'm working from home, I am working. Like you wouldn't just pop in my office like this. Um, and of course he was really, really kind about the whole thing. But you know, being able to set those kinds of expectations as well as creating an environment where you don't have a lot of distractions in reach, where you have ideally a tidy desk, because tidy desk means tidy mind for many people. And and you can really, you know, clear the things out of your mind that are going to be distractions, and then sit down and do it. One of the things that I use sometimes for when I have an open loop, when I have something that I'm kind of perseverating on and I can't let go, is I'll write it down. And just like sometimes taking 5 or 10 minutes to journal something, or even just write like, remember to pick up the blinds at the curtain store or whatever. And just like putting that on a sticky note and then putting it away out of sight, that can sometimes be enough to kind of interrupt that cycle for me and let me focus on the task at hand. I don't know what your techniques are for that, but I think everybody can find things that work for them to kind of set those things aside. And then here's another technique I'll share, which is not technical at all, but deadlines and rewards often work for people to help them become more productive and focused. And I'd just like to point out the 1,000 push-ups challenge. You may notice that I was the winner of this. This was like a little family challenge that we did to see who could be the first to do 1,000 push-ups. And I think there was a limit on how many we could do per day. So it was spread out over a long time period. So it was really about the consistency of like doing your push-ups every day. I use sticker charts. I mean, I'm 50 years old and I love a sticker chart. They're not just for preschoolers. I have one going right now, actually, on my desk here, which is my salad and sunrise chart, because I have learned that eating well and getting up early enough to see the sunrise and actually getting outdoors for it is something that just energizes me more than almost anything else. And if I get out and have a walk at sunrise, I'm almost guaranteed to have a good day. So that's my current one. I get a sticker every time I do that. So it's silly, but you know, having ways to track your progress and give yourself a little reward, even if it's something that doesn't really mean much, but it's like, you know, something that you do to kind of acknowledge like, oh, I did a good thing. That really is motivating for people and helps with habit change and discipline. Finding an accountability partner and making it into something kind of fun are also ways that help to do that. Oh, and I didn't mention the first thing on the slide there, which is about creating artificial deadlines for someday tasks. So, you know, everybody has a long list of things they'd like to do someday. And actually putting some things on the calendar can help those become a reality. And this is all based in like the psychological research. If you ever want a good podcast, if you're podcast listeners, about like how the brain works in relation to these kinds of things, I really like Hidden Brain. I'll type that in the chat if you want to check that out. It's given me some good insights into like how my brain works in relationship to my my vocation. So, okay, here's something that where actually technology can make you faster. So let's say that you have slow computers and slow internet connections that are a big waste of time, and you're actually losing 5 minutes a day. So that equates to if you have 5 staff that are working 260 days a year, that equates to $333 per year at a rate of $40 per hour that you are wasting because you have computers that are slow. But not really, because if you get new computers, you're not actually getting $4,300 in your pocket, right? You're just getting more time back. And so the real value of it is like, what else can you do with that time? Does that give you time to interact more directly with clients, or maybe take some donors out to lunch? That could lead to real money, and it could be a lot more than $4,300, right? Or, you know, what else can you do with those extra 5 minutes a day is the real question. So it's kind of, even though you can sort of calculate things out like that to see what's the value of your time, it sort of can be misleading. The other thing is, with computers, if you wait until they break, then they're going to cost you more. And so staying up to date on computers, replacing them before they are completely obsolete and in jeopardy of just giving you the blue screen of death without warning, that can really save you money. So with this example on the screen, for example, if you bought this when it wasn't on sale, then you could end up spending up to $3,000 on a computer that would replace, you know, something similar to this. But if you shop around, and if you really dig for deals and find something that is on sale, and plan for that, then, you know, you can often save quite a bit of money when you're not panic purchasing to replace broken equipment. So that's a good argument for having a regular computer replacement cycle, in addition to just that they tend to run faster and have less time just kind of waiting for things to load. Here, we're almost getting toward the end here. I want to leave plenty of time for questions. And please keep asking questions as we go along too, by the way. Daily highlights is a technique that I learned from a friend maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and I love this. I keep a little OneNote journal, so it's just like a digital note-taking thing on my computer, and it's also on my phone, like a replica of the same note. And every month I just number all the days of the month, and next to each number as I go along, I'll just write one highlight of the day. And it's either something that made me happy, or it's something that feels like an accomplishment for me. And I try to keep it focused on my work in this case. And tell you what, when I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels, I'm not making progress on something, I can open up that note and see like, oh, here's, you know, 24 things that I've done so far this month that that felt like forward progress. And it's also a great way to kind of reflect. It's almost like a little mini journal. When I go back years ago, like what was I doing 2 years ago today? Whatever, it's kind of nice to see what sort of just little things were meaningful to me in that moment. So that is not necessarily going to make you more productive, but it can make you feel like you're making progress when you get this sense of like, oh, I'm just like in this quicksand. Like I keep trying all these things and I'm not getting anywhere. And you can see like, actually, you are doing some things that are moving you forward. Since many of you are with newer or smaller organizations, I added this in here with some things for you to think about that might be different from your peers who work for larger organizations or organizations that have been around for 30 or 40 years. So, so first of all, before you spend money on a project management software or marketing automation tool or anything else that I've mentioned here, check to see if it's free or discounted for nonprofits. And the first place to go is TechSoup. That's where TechSoup.org is where you find all the discounts for major software providers like Adobe, Microsoft. They also have discounts on equipment from HP and a number of others. That's where I got my $200 headset for like 20 bucks. It was a pretty awesome deal when I was working for a nonprofit. So TechSoup is a good place to start, but then you can also go directly to the providers in some cases if they're not on TechSoup and say, I work for a nonprofit, can you get me a discount? Worst they can say is no. right? And I've had people say yes many times. Other things that you could do are use pro bono volunteers. So a pro bono resource could do a hands-on analysis of how you work and give you tips about process improvement, how to take some friction out of your processes, how to increase your productivity. There are lots of people who really know process improvement inside out, who are signed up on platforms like Taproot or Volunteer Match and are willing to help nonprofits with things like that. And I think those folks love using their professional expertise to help instead of just raking leaves, for example. Not that that's not a really important service, but sometimes people really like to use something that they feel especially qualified to do. Also, my advice is don't feel like just because you're a small nonprofit, you don't get to have nice things. You get to have nice things, and you know, especially a faster internet connection or a software subscription that is going to give you a lot of extra time freed up in your day, that can be well worth the money. And so, you know, rather just focusing on spending as little as possible, I think it's important for all of us to really think about the value we're getting for those dollars and be willing to invest in technology when it's really going to make a difference. Oh, Erica, thanks for mentioning Catch a Fire. That's another one that I could add to this list for pro bono help, for connecting with professionals that are able to connect nonprofits or are able to help nonprofits. And of course, the Hartford Foundation's program is great if you are looking to hire a professional and you want a grant to help you do some kind of capacity building work. What else? I guess on the bottom of this slide is talking about focus. So think about mission and money. Those are probably the most important things for the effectiveness of your organization. So start with the service you provide, look for ways to streamline that without sacrificing quality. And then think about fundraising and maybe think about some of the tech tools and techniques that could help you raise more money, but also consultants that could help you make the most of your time and resources to maximize fundraising results. All right, so let's move into, I've got a couple of things for wrapping up here besides questions. I was wondering if you could all reflect with me a little bit and just name some of the key points and takeaways from our last hour and 15 minutes together. What were some of the key points that you took away from this? And you could put that in the chat. And I'm going to give you one more too, to kind of, if you don't feel like answering that question, have a second one as well. And I'll encourage you to share this in the chat, but also maybe get out your notebook and just jot down a note to yourself, or like put a sticky note on your wall or whatever. What is one thing you want to do based on what we talked about together here? And how might you keep yourself on track, or who might support you in this? And I'm seeing some of the highlights or some of the key points that you heard was about stop using folders in email, trying tasks, using archive. Yeah, so it sounds like you took away some things from the email section. And Pomodoro time blocking. Yeah, great. I hope that you are folks who will not be scared of technology in the future. That you'll be the kind of person who, when you get a new tool or even a tool that you've used for a while, that you'll go through the menu and the settings and just try everything. Like just click on stuff and see what it does. Because that's a great way to learn and discover some things that may turn out to really be handy for you. And I think so many people just kind of use the bare minimum features of software, and they're maybe afraid to click on things because, like, what if I delete something, or what if it messes something up? But it's really pretty difficult to do irreparable harm. So Okay. Oh, and somebody picked up what I was laying down with David Allen and Hidden Brain. So glad you found that useful too. Needing assistance. That's great. I'm glad you found some useful tips here. And like I said, I'll share slide. I have already shared slides with our hosts, and so you'll get a copy of that, and you can look back at this later, share it with a friend if you want to. So my last, it's technically my second last slide to share with you is just to invite more questions from you. So this is your chance to ask anything else that was on your mind. And I'll hand it over to, I'm not sure actually who's going to do this at the very end. Maybe our last 5 minutes or so, I'll hand it back to the library and the foundation to kind of bring us home. So, but looking at questions, so do you have tips for getting through an email backlog? Kate, I'm going to make a confession to you, which is that I once, before I figured out these techniques that I use today, I had to declare email bankruptcy. I had like 3,000 messages in my inbox, and I was about to go on maternity leave. And there was no way I was going to get through those messages before my baby arrived. And so on my last day of work, I just selected everything and hit delete and hoped that nothing horrible would happen. And it didn't, like nothing terrible happened. I did not hear from anyone that like, oh, I sent you an email 2 months ago and you haven't responded yet or whatever. It turned out that all that stuff that was like causing me so much anxiety was actually not that important, because as I had gone along, I had dealt with all the urgent tasks. I had dealt with all the high priority things. And what was left in my inbox was like, oh, I want to get back to this later and like read this newsletter, or I want to like take a closer look at this sometime, or things like that. And so just like kind of blowing everything up and deleting it was the best thing that I could have done. In the future, I would say rather than deleting, I probably would have archived it. And just made it disappear from the inbox, but not disappear altogether, because then I could still, if I really needed one of those messages, I could have looked it up later. Short of that, there are some ways that you can use searching and sorting and filtering in your inbox to kind of batch things in a way that make them easier to go through quickly. So I would say, for example, in Gmail, you can easily filter by the sender. And so I might just sort by sender, or I might filter to say, I want to see like all the messages from my boss and all the messages from like my closest 2 colleagues, and it'll filter out everything else. And then I'll just kind of go through those first. Right. I don't know. There are just like other ways to kind of sort things so that you can batch and figure out priorities. Good luck though. Sometimes you do get to a point where it's like, it's kind of like the point of diminishing returns, where spending another minute on your old emails is not really worth it. Oh, Jessica uses color coding. I love like, I actually really love sorting and flagging and coding, and you should see my sock drawer. It is like a work of art. But so that's why it was extra hard for me to let go of all the folders in my email. But I catch myself sometimes now and like doing that just because it's satisfying to me and not because it actually is useful at all. So it's about finding the right balance. What else? Let's see if there's other questions. Tracy's just shared a survey. So Tracy, do you want to say anything about that?
Just thank you for attending, and we just appreciate when people take a few minutes and share their feedback so we can make sure these sessions are worthwhile to you. But continue on. We're not done yet.
Take a couple more questions if we want. I'll also I'm going to forward on to this very last slide that I have, which is some more resources for you. So if you're a person who likes to read, there are some articles here that will have some good tips about productivity and so forth. So I actually think the first one by Stephanie Vosa is really interesting. I've been fascinated by this idea of like like, could I work with my energy cycles a little bit better, to like do certain tasks at the time when I'm most equipped to do well at them. And kind of almost moving back to the schedule that my grandparents who were dairy farmers had, where like they didn't work a 9 to 5 schedule at all. They milked the cows when they needed to be milked, and they made hay while the sun shone, whatever. So I'm trying to like kind of experiment, since I have the flexibility to do so, with kind of wacky schedules that mean, maybe at 8 p.m. I have all this energy for writing, and so that's when I'm going to do my writing. And not apologize for taking an hour off in the middle of the day to go for a walk. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any new questions in the last couple of minutes, so maybe I'll just hand things back to our host to close things up.
Great. Karen, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for attending today. As was mentioned, please take time and fill out the survey if you can. And a reminder that a follow-up email will come to all of you that will include the slides and a link to the recording. And stay tuned. We'll be announcing our next workshop soon. So unless I've missed anything, Tracy, Lucas, are we good? All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining.